Hi, this is Petra and Missy coming from the big picture. This is podcast number 7. Thank you for joining us today. Um, I think today what we're going to be talking about is I've mentioned before in the prior podcast that thoughts and words have power. And we have thoughts all day long, and thoughts of ourselves, thoughts of others. And it becomes a pattern, a distraction, and it takes up a lot of time. And time is part of how we invest in ourselves. I was talking to someone new the other day, messaging her back and forth, and she was talking down about herself and saying that she didn't have a lot of talent. I collect ceramic Christmas trees and I belong to a club, and we post pictures. And I had pictures up of my house decorated for the holidays, and she was just like over the top with compliments and saying how beautiful it was and what talent I had. And I told her, as light is very important to me, and I love to garden, and I do a lot of containers, and I love a lot of color, and being outside and the warmth and the sunlight. And it's hard for me when I don't have that. I have like seasonal affect disorder. So I try to do other things for myself that bring me joy. And having all those lights around the house really brings me joy. And I do it for myself. Other people can enjoy it when they come here, but I do it for myself because I matter. And if you really enjoy something, it's my belief that you channel it. So I enjoy gardening, I enjoy decorating, I enjoy cooking, um, and being creative, just basically being creative. So I said to her, pay attention to what brings you joy and think about being a child. When you were a child, what are some of the things that you enjoyed? They have adult coloring books. Get an adult coloring book. And when we tell ourselves, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, like I said, it's that pattern, and we start to believe it, even if it's not true. And we stifle that line of creativity to our higher selves. Um, so I told her to challenge that belief that when she hears or she wants to say, "Oh, I'm not good at that. I have no talent," to stop herself and say, "Wait a minute, that's not me," and just sit with it and ask it, give it a voice, and say, "What is it you want from me?" Because we can travel back to when this started. And maybe it started in childhood when somebody told you you're no good at it and you shut down, or you compared yourself as a child to everybody else, or you were really good at something and somebody, had you felt jealousy around you, so you felt as though you didn't want to let your light shine, and you retreated within, and you didn't let your light shine, you played small. So this happens here in life.
I it's funny you said that because I loved art and I still love art. And this morning I got something with myself because I you know me, I always feel like I'm on that like wheel and I keep going and going and going and going, and the hamster wheel that just, you know, and I've had a lot of work to do with my schoolwork this weekend specifically because it's grading time. And something said to me today, this morning, do more art. You enjoy art, do more art. But it's funny when you said when you go back and when you were a child and somebody kind of stifles that. And I can remember I I had two very good friends in elementary school. And whenever we went to the one friend's house for her birthday party, she had a coloring. It was always one of the things was a coloring contest. And every year they would say, well, we might as well not do this because Missy's just going to win again. So it's like it kind of like did stifle me a little bit. And I just remembered that, so it's like, okay, maybe that stifling, I don't want that stifling anymore. I want to do more art. I want to be more creative. You're creative with your flowers and your trees. I'm creative with painting and coloring and my own drawing, and I really have been feeling that lately, like just do more of that.
And another thing, a part of that is, as human beings, whenever somebody, on the other hand, gives us a compliment, we usually poo-poo it. Like somebody says, "Oh, you're so pretty." No, no, I'm not. And that's what human beings do. And it's not nice because it's like you're backhanding somebody when they say that.
Mm-hmm.
All we have to say is thank you. If it is in alignment, it feels like it's something that is true about yourself. Like, Missy, you're very artistic. You draw beautifully. We have to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you were with people that um, wanted to grow, they could have said, "Missy, you're really good at that. Could you show me?" When you were a kid.
Right.
Like if you and I had been friends, the type of personality I am, I would have said, "Wow, can you teach me how to do that?"
Mm-hmm.
And you would have been more than glad to.
Oh yeah.
So somebody else feeling inferior is not them, but it's an energy on them.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where balance and relationships are important because we play off of each other. That's why I said it for us, it's very important to have our other like minded people, which I call our mirrors, so that we can continue to stay in a higher vibration and to be seeking and developing other gifts,
Mm-hmm.
always growing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, with having your voice, if somebody said that, you could say, "Would you like me to show you some ways to do this? Do you want to learn?"
Right. I think at that time
You're young.
I was like 7. I want to say I remember being like 7,
And how did it
and
make you feel when they said that?
it made me feel like so awful, like that I wasn't good at it. I was like they saw that I was, but I think even that time I like went out of the lines purposely and played small,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Or I remember sometimes eliminating myself from the game and saying, I'm just going to color over here. You guys, I'm not going to put it in. You guys do it. So I played small just to appease. So I didn't, and that was a time too when I didn't want to be seen, you know?
Because somebody couldn't be happy for you.
Right. And that jealousy, believe it, uh, continued through high school with this one particular friend. So, it started very young.
And the people we're with, especially with them any majority of time, they have an impact on our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We hold ourselves back.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can also feel like we need to overpower and become somebody that we're not, become aggressive or
Yeah.
nasty or whatever. So we have an impact on each other.
And that was just not my way, and I just played small. I think about all those years I just played small, because every once in a while, just that little crack of, you know she would zing me with things along the way throughout the years, and I just took it. But now I have my voice.
And now you have a choice too. I mean, you wouldn't stay with somebody
No.
like that. You
No.
would walk away
Mm-hmm.
because it wouldn't feel good.
It does. No, it didn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So thoughts and words have power, and we have these limiting beliefs about ourselves. So I told this woman she wanted to do ceramics, and she lives in Texas. So I told her, maybe you can take a class. And she just, she doesn't believe in herself. And who cares if you're good or not? And there may be somebody who would like to teach you. And she said, you know what? Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll ask a neighbor to go with me. So just by being that positive voice, just by, like when I said that, I actually felt love for her, and I sent that love to her, and she felt it. And that's all it takes. It's not to say, oh, don't feel that way. Why do you say that? But because then you're only sending a message that you want to fix her and nobody's broken. And what it does is it actually feeds the energy on her in the pattern that she's keeping herself small. So it actually is more beneficial to either say, you know, why do you feel that way? Where are you feeling it? And let them do the self discovery.
But I think too, by sending her love, she raised her vibration.
Absolutely.
And she was able to decide herself, maybe I can do that, you know? And, you know, asking her why in the self discovery is important too, but it like really made her feel it and say, you know what, that would be great for me to do.
I have had strong women in my life that have believed in me. I wouldn't be doing the podcast if it wasn't for you doing it with me, Missy, and you know that. It was a big step for both of us because, first of all, we never know what we're going to talk about. And we're not the type of people we want to force anything on anyone. But we did it because we care. And we did it because we know how this type of work, intuitive energy healing, has enabled us to clear up energies that we've had, that we've, taken on, that we've accepted throughout our lifetimes, and how in releasing it, how there's this space for us to go back to being a child and tapping into the God's love so that we can rediscover who we are and create a whole new relationship with ourselves and realize we're just not this human selves, that we have those other parts of ourselves that we talk about. We have the higher self, we have the centered self, we have the mother within, we have the God self. And that is so empowering. And it enables you to have the love that you want, which is your own, and to be able to trust yourself. So the book, I think I said the last podcast that I am in the middle of writing a book, and I just took a writer's course with Hay House. And this is huge for me. But my whole life, God told me that He wanted me to write a book. And even showed me the cover and the name. It got to the point that not doing it took up so much in my head, that it was like always this feeling of like I was letting myself down, letting God down. And that feels horrible. Actually doing it, is taking the step and setting like an hour a day to do it. But it is in my flow.
And also, don't you find yourself in that space at that time?
Yes. Yes, I do. And writing the book is revisiting my past and telling my story, but it's not just so much that it's about me, it's about universal situations. And the reason why I say with our children or with yourself, is go back to when you were a kid and see what made you happy, see what brought you joy. And when I was a little girl, I hated gym because I had I was overweight and didn't like to draw attention to my body, and I've just never really felt good in my body. Always felt like it weighted me down. But I used to love to go to library. I loved to read. I struggled with math, but I was very good with English. And I used to go over to the biographies and the autobiographies. And I would get like 3 books that were allowed, and I would just go right through them for the week. And I loved reading about people, Florence Nightingale, Benjamin Franklin. And I just loved it. And I would even take a couple of them next week that I want to read, and I would stick them like over by other books and hide them because I wanted somebody else to take them because the other kids would have them for like they rent them like 3 times. And I swear there's a couple of kids that used to deliberately go over there to do it to me, just annoy the crap out of me. But I loved reading about people. Mm-hmm. So there was a sign right there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much that I wanted to write, it was because I was interested in people. Mm-hmm. And I was interested in the fact that they were seekers, that they were doing good for humanity.
I was going to say they were healers.
They were healers. Yeah. Absolutely. They were, they were healers.
Yeah.
And they let the light shine. Mm-hmm. And they're read about today. And and they had connection. They made a difference. And I've always felt that's why I'm here. And I think that that's why everyone's here. We all have a purpose. We all have a calling. And your purpose and your calling doesn't mean that it's not scary sometimes because you're seeing, but it really does bring you joy. You're on fire with it.
And I also think when you learn to do this intuitive energy healing and have God's love come through you for other people, God also brings the people into your life. I don't want to say like that need the help, but that because nobody needs help. He brings people into your life that are like you. Mm-hmm. And I think also that's why we do this podcast, mm-hmm. because it's like he's telling us you're reaching people. And this book, you're going to reach people with this book. And I think that's, God just loves that we have his love to give to people. So it's the more like-minded, the more people that have this, believe in this intuitive energy healing, the more people we're going to reach because that's God's love. Mm-hmm. And it's the book, it's the podcast, and we don't push anything on anybody. It's just we're led. We're led.
And when you are in alignment with your purpose, I think sometimes what's intimidating is, like with the book, I thought, oh gosh, I'm not really good with grammar. Mm-hmm. I'll have to do that. Oh, I don't know how to get something published. I'm a self-published. I don't know. And I could get myself very worked up, mm-hmm. and overwhelmed.
It's overwhelming.
Right, and overwhelmed. But if you're open and if you actually give that to the universe and say, please bring me the support, the knowledge, the people to help guide me, it comes. And you don't even have to ask. Mm-mm. People will come to you. Mm-hmm. Successful people, the key thing that they know is they don't have to do it themselves. Mm-hmm. They surround themselves with educated, knowledgeable, giving, loving, supportive people. Mm-hmm. And that's why they're successful. And I always say we're not meant to do this alone. We're not meant to heal alone. We're not meant to walk through life alone. We're social creatures. So my one friend said to me, she just said to me the other day, she goes, mm-hmm. She's retired now and she's in Florida part of the year. And she said, give me it and I'll proofread it for you. Mm-hmm. You've taken recordings and you've, mm-hmm. Listened to them and typed them out for me. Hay House. I listened to other programs that you can buy and go to where they teach you how to write a book, like structure and outlines. And I can be very impulsive. And I listened to a couple of them and was tempted to go ahead and click that button and buy this program. And something said, no, wait. And I hit the pause button, which is big for me. Mm-hmm. And I sat with it. Because patience is not one of my strong suits, but I've really, grown with that over the years. And what popped up was this writer's course with Hay House. And it's like $20 a month. Mm-hmm. And there's other writers, there's thousands of people, and mine would be considered a teaching memoir. And you get your established relationship with these other people that are writing. And it's funny because one of my biggest mentors is Wayne Dyer, and he was Hay House, and I read um, something of his every day, and I truly, this is going to sound far out and crazy, but I feel that man with me. I went to one of his in New York City, friend of mine, and we went down on a bus trip to see him speak about the Tao, the book that he wrote. And he was on stage barefooted, just walking back and forth. And he was so charismatic. He was so knowledgeable. He was so real. He had such a huge heart. He just emanated just love. God's love just came right through him. He had a great sense of humor. He was like the real deal. And he made every person, I looked at every person, and there was a lot of us in that crowd. He made every person feel like he was speaking to you. And I bought the book, and I had intermission, and he brought your book over and he signed it. And he, signed it and handed it to me. And I looked in his eyes, those beautiful blue eyes of his, and he looked at me, and there was just this energy of exchange, like, you're going to do this. And I just felt it like in my heart, and I can feel it right now. And it can make me cry because I felt that connection. And that's what you feel with other like-minded people. They look at you and they acknowledge you, and they say, I see you.
And it's an acknowledgement, and it's hard to describe, but it's an acknowledgement on a different level.
And when I work with people and I'm holding a space for them, that's what I do. I acknowledge them. I acknowledge their pain. If they share something with me, and very often they do that they've never shared with anybody else because it's very shameful or something that's happened to them, very traumatic, I thank them. I say to them, thank you very much. It's an honor that you share that with me, that you trust me.
Well, when you were describing Wayne Dyer, and I'm going to say it's you. Not Wayne Dyer is you, but the way you described Wayne Dyer is what you give to people.
And he gave God's love.
Yes.
He really did. So I put that out to the universe that I felt overwhelmed and I don't have all the answers.
But look, everything that came.
It's coming, yes.
Yeah.
And
you're working.
Yes,
you're working with it.
Yes, I am.
It's not just coming.
Yes.
It's coming, but you're embracing it. And it's being led to you.
Yeah. And you can take a book to be to be with a publisher, and a lot of famous authors will tell you, I took this book like Chicken Soup for the Soul. That was turned down many, 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 many times until finally somebody said yes. And
look at how beautiful that is, and look how popular it is, and people contribute to it.
Yeah, stories.
Yeah.
So I had limiting beliefs my whole life around that. I had a lot of limiting beliefs because people in my family told me, I was somebody that was in my life that was 7 years older than me. She used to tell me all the time I was stupid, and I believed her. And it wasn't true. But I am nowhere near a saint. But before I say something, I feel it. Like if I say something and it comes back around and it's like a boomerang, it hits me in the gut. Especially like about maybe 20 years ago, like it came around the time of my life and it was like, wow, this is not working. Like gossiping or getting it just was like, woo. Like God was like, no, that's not where I need you.
Yeah.
So limiting beliefs they have like maybe they make you feel safe in some way, but just pay attention. Like, really, how does it make you feel?
Because if you really feel it, you know it's not where you belong.
So in writing this book, like I said, it's a teaching memoir. So it's about my life. And when I came into the world, I had a lot of shadow energy around me too, because my mother's sister, my aunt, who I was very close to, was a raging alcoholic, huge woman. She was a big, tall, heavy-set woman. And she just was not grounded at all. And this horrible shadow energy used to just channel through her.
I mean, I can remember being here, and she would storm through the front door and just
she was sober.
bellow.
You knew her when she was
Yes,
sober.
but just bellow. And it was like, even I was like, I would like,
Clench up.
Aunt Kay.
Mm-hmm. But she was such a loving soul.
She was.
Too.
She was. You could see the love in her.
She would have stepped in front of a Mack truck for me. Mm-hmm. And she was one of my greatest teachers. But she's a huge part of this book because I saw that shadow side as a young child, and I saw how afraid my mother was of it. And I saw how my father never put boundaries. Like, she'd come and ruin every single holiday because she was drunk off her ass, and she would just, and she was like physically abusive too. And my mother would never allow my father to like throw her out of the house. But my mother was petrified of her. And my mom actually used to like appease her and say, like, one Christmas, I remember being in the dining room, and my Aunt Kay said, "Come on over here, Pete, sit next to me." I didn't want to go over there. She was, she used to rub her hand, her fist, and she used to hit you on the arm and say, "I'm going to give you a potato." I mean, she was nuts, and it hurt. So I remember my mother saying, go on over there, go say hi to Aunt Kay, because my mother wanted to shut her up and keep her satiated and calm, right? So I'd walk over there and I'd sit there next to her.
And you'd take it.
Yes, I took it. And I took it. And the weird part of it is, I know she loved me. But I really do. I know I was her favorite.
Yeah.
I know she saw herself in me, and I also saw myself in her, because I've always known I have a shadow side. We all do. And I've never been afraid to look at that in myself or other people, because that's truly the only way that you can love yourself unconditionally. God doesn't expect us to be perfect. God loves everybody. And God truly loves unconditionally because God doesn't expect you to be perfect. Didn't make you to be perfect, right? So I can accept myself and others that we have a shadow side. However, we're also responsible for that when we act out on it. So I was very strong, really strong. But there was also a logical part of me that was like, I don't want to go over there. And how about you big people do something about this and set a boundary and have your voices and tell her you cannot come here. I don't care if you have to lock her out or call the cops. So I wasn't showed boundaries. And I wasn't shown that, it's other people out there that are, as much as my parents loved me, and they did, I had a wonderful childhood, and they over met my needs in a lot of ways. They always, were selfless. They always gave to me rather than themselves. And I couldn't have had a more beautiful childhood. But I really felt so different because I did have a voice, and it wasn't shown to me how to use my voice. And I was always observing, and I could always see people's fear. I could see where they were playing small. I just always saw it. And I never really I felt that within myself, because I was always connected to God. So that courage, that knowing, it's a knowing, was always been God. And God, I knew God would never leave me. I mean, I was created by God, and I knew God would never leave me. He has never left me. I've strayed from God times in my life because I'm human. And, going to the shadow side and playing around like we do as teenagers, whatever. But when writing the book, so I'm talking about these things and writing about these things, people always ask me, like, about loved ones that have crossed over, and they want to hear from them, and they miss them, and they want signs. And, I never really advertise myself as a medium, but I do get a lot of information from people that are open. And it's not as though I can go over and just pick something up. It's not like that. It would be, it's a level of respect. So it's like you wouldn't walk in somebody's house and just knock on their door and walk through and, go in the refrigerator and take something out of the refrigerator, right? You'd wait till you were invited in and ask, would you like something to drink? So that's how it works. And it depends on how open the person is that comes to me, and how the person on the other side wants to be heard. But when my Aunt Kay was in the hospital and she was getting ready to leave this reality and go back home to heaven, she had pneumonia, and she was unconscious. And I whispered to her and said to her, Aunt Kay, please give me a sign and let me know that you're at peace. And if anybody can give me a sign, I know it's going to be you. We had a very special connection. My relationship with her was not easy. She had a lot of mental illness. I took care of her as she got older. It took a toll on me. But what I noticed was she passed away that night. And what I noticed, and you can't say, give me this sign. You have to be awake enough and let it come to you. I noticed that whenever I walked into the room, the clock would be double digits. So it would be 9:11 on the TV. I'd walk into my bedroom and the clock would be 2:22 or what. And this happens to me many times a day, right? And since I've been writing the book, it's been happening. I can't
all the time.
All the time. All the time. And the reason being is because I'm thinking about her. I'm writing about her. I'm sharing how she was one of those people that supported me my whole life. It wasn't easy. Like I said, it's easy to love people that are easy to love. She was not easy to love, but I did love her. I loved her unconditionally. But I made boundaries as I got older with her.
Yes.
And they were very hard for me. She challenged me in those boundaries. It wasn't easy for me. I didn't want to hurt her. I made the boundary. You just can't stop over here when I'm working. I work from home, and you can't come until 6:00. And she'd drive by several times in the car.
I remember that because I remember one specific time. I remember when I was here and she came in and you said, "Hang on a minute," and you went and you told her. I do remember that.
I tried to be kind.
Yeah, but before that, she would come right in.
Yeah.
She would come right in.
And she was like this whirlwind, so she would suck the energy out, and people were there getting, their hair done with me, and they would be wanting my time because even though I didn't advertise as an intuitive energy healer back then, I was always using my gift.
You were.
And people felt better when they left.
But setting the boundary, people would think, oh, that's like, how can you do that to your family? But it helped her, it helped her grow, and it helped you. When you set those boundaries, it's like you don't realize how much it helps that other person grow.
Well, it does too, because I was always absorbing that shadow side off of her, even though she was a dry alcoholic as she got older. She had to, since I was setting the boundaries, she had to feel that anxiety that always made her feel like she could just impulsively stop here.
Yeah.
Because she would get stirred up and she wouldn't know how to deal with it or didn't want to deal with it.
And you were safe for her.
Yes. So she'd come here and she'd dump it on me.
Yes.
So what it did was I put it back at her, tried to with love, and then she had to feel it or go try to find someplace else to dump it. When you allow that, the person actually goes out on a higher vibration. And
that was a gift.
Yeah.
That was a gift for her.
It is. We taught each other. We really taught each other. But she's with me all the time.
Yeah.
And my husband said, "Oh God, I can hear her now." To my mother, she used to call my mother Jen. Jen, I'm in a book. I'm in a book, And my granddaughter's middle name is Kay. So she would love that too. And she comes out with some doozies. My granddaughter does, just like her too. But my point is going back to our loved ones and how they give us messages. She is so thrilled that I'm writing this book. She's being so supportive to me. I can feel Wayne Dyer. I have his book right here. I can feel him, just like his love coming through to me.
And I also feel like you talk about too, she's lightening on the other side.
Absolutely. Yes. Because when we release energy, prior generations and future generations release. This heavy stuff is generational. This was on her father. My mother was a very beautiful soul. My mother was very light. But in her family line, there was a lot of shadow energy. Alcoholism runs big time addiction in both sides of my family, my mother's and my father's. But my mother's bloodline had a lot of dark energy in it. And scary. So I know that I've changed the pattern.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be passed on to my grandchildren.
No.
We can always pick it up or whatever, but so that's one of the ways, an example of how, number one, facing a limiting belief and then putting it out to the universe. This is what I'm asking for to help me so that I can serve my purpose. And believing, and it'll come toward you. Listen to the messages. Like you said, there is work in it. Listen to the message, and then with me, doing this, my aunt has been able to come through to me more. I have a story about, and forgive me if I've already spoken about this in another podcast, I can't remember, but one story is when I was in Jamaica and my husband and I just gotten there and we're at the pool bar and there was this young um, man, Jamaican man, and he asked us what we wanted to drink and he started to make our drink and I kept hearing purple, 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 purple over and over again. And when I hear it over and over again, I'm like really led to say something. And that takes courage because who does that? Just walks up to a stranger and says, have you ever heard of it? Blah, blah, blah. But I did it because I know God wants me to. So I'm respectful. And I just said, I don't know if you've ever heard of an intuitive energy healer. And he said, yeah, I'm on. And I said to him, okay, well, I do intuitive energy healing. And what I'm hearing is the color purple over and over again. And he said, I know what that is. And he said, my baby sister died and we painted her coffin purple. And I said, yep. And then I kept hearing the number 26 and I kept telling him this. And he said, I know what that is too. My older sister was 26 when my baby sister died, and she has never been able to move past it. She's got very bad depression. So I said, give her a message from your sister that she's around your sister and she's happy and she's peaceful, and she doesn't want your sister to be in this place. So she wants your sister to start living her life again. And when she does do that, your sister lets go of the sadness, whether she goes and gets herself help or whatever she does, your baby sister's going to be able to move closer to her. She's going to be able to feel her. And then I also said I picked up some energy about her mom and her dad with fighting over property. And he said that was true too. So a couple of days later, he came back to work and he was like thanking me, saying, I really helped everybody. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, people on the property that worked there were like whispering about me and wondering if I was red. Are you a witch? But there's another example. Mm-hmm. Also, the other day, I was working with someone that's been. She's come to me privately for sessions, and also she's in a class every week. And she lost her husband very young, and he was ill, and she took care of him. She's always been this caregiver in her family, with her siblings, and she has a big heart, and she's just very in tune with people, very sensitive. She's a healer. And when her husband passed away, her life fell apart, and she was hurting, and was in a very dark place. And she has opened herself up and been vulnerable. She has grown. One of her husband's friends, they used to go on vacation, his family and her husband and her family. And he reached out to her by email. So they've been talking back and forth, and they met for lunch once. And she felt like she was betraying her husband. But her husband has given her many signs through me. And he has a great sense of humor. Like I told her, did your husband sit like this? And she's like, oh my gosh, yes. And her husband actually sent him to her.
That's what I was going to say. He probably sent him.
Yes. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a romantic relationship.
But it's like they want their loved ones to be happy.
Yes, they do. So she wants to retire from a job that she's in, and she thought she could next year, but however, she doesn't have enough time in to get the health insurance. So she was disappointed by it. And I was talking to her, and I told her I kept seeing the letter W as she was telling me about the job. Clear as anything, WWW. And she said right away, I know who that is. That was this other person that I worked with, Mrs. whatever her name, Wojciechowski, or whatever her name was. And the people that put me in that position thought that they were punishing me because, I guess maybe she was known to be difficult or whatever, but they hit it off. And she said, I loved that. I loved working with her. And this woman, the stories that she told me, she was a healer too. And she saw this other woman's heart. She saw her. So they were very in alignment.
Yeah.
And she, as she's telling me the story, she's raising her vibration. And then I told her I saw the number 36, 36, 36. And I said, what was going on when you were 36? And she said to me, well, that's when I moved from where I used to live, where my whole family was, my mom, my siblings and stuff, and my husband wanted to move up here because we couldn't afford to buy a house where we were. And he wanted our girls to have, a home to grow up in, a yard and everything. And I didn't want to go. And my husband forced me to come look at the house, and it was a nice house. And she said, and I like the house and everything, but I didn't want to go. And she didn't use her voice, but she did it for her children because she loves her daughters, and that's who she is. She puts her needs and desires and wants ahead of, puts everybody else's ahead of her own. And healers tend to do that. And it's not right or wrong. There's no such thing as a right decision or wrong decision. But the funny thing was, when she moved up here, her husband was working even harder and wasn't home that much anyway. So now she's there with no support system. And of course, then your vibration dips down. She didn't wallow in it. She became friends with neighbors and stuff. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because she felt guilty going out and meeting this guy for lunch again and maybe going skating and really struggling with it. And I pick up on people. I'm like, okay, that's why you have a headache right now. That's why your stomach is bothering. She has these issues. So I said, go back to when you were 36 now and have your voice. Look at your husband and tell him, no, I don't want to go. I'm not going. And feel that. How does it feel? And she says, feels good. Because I'm pissed off. I said, okay. So, and she laughed about it, right? I was like, that resentment is in you. And give it to your husband now because he wants it. He wants to take it from you. And when you do that, he is smiling. He's smiling. He's not saying, I'm really sorry that I made you move, because that's not how it works. When people pass over, they never say they're sorry because there's nothing to be sorry about. Everything happens here for a reason. So I said, but he wants that. He wants for you to give it to him so that you can now go back to when you were 36 and have your voice and start living your life again. And it doesn't matter if it's with this guy or somebody else. And she felt it. And she did it. And she let it go. And she was nervous going and meeting him for lunch. And she beforehand reached out to me and she said, oh my God, I feel sick to my stomach, this, that, and everything. She got to the restaurant and he wasn't there. She thought she was stood up and he happened to be at the bar, and she's laughing. And she said, as soon as he walked over, she said, ooh, everything calmed down. And she enjoyed herself. So there's her husband coming through again, but because she's open and the husband is open. So like you said, now the husband is lighter. So these things are real. They're real. These things, they happen.
They're very real.
Yes, they do. I mean, the one time I was working on, we had a class here at the house, remember? And I was physically working on someone. And I kept hearing Walter, Walter, Walter. And I said to this girl, your dad's here, but do you know of a Walter? And she said, no. And I turned around, looked at you guys, and you said, it's me.
I mean, and Walter is such a unique name,
too.
It really is.
Walter.
And I'm like, okay. And it resonated with me because I only knew one Walter, and he was my grandfather's best friend.
And your grandfather comes through all the time.
All the time. And, even with me, even before I did this intuitive energy healing, I would be in my house, not even in a public place. My grandfather would wear Old Spice. And I would be in my house smelling Old Spice. And there's no one would have Old Spice in my house. It was me and my children at the time. And I'm like, okay, Poppy, you're here. I know you're here. Like I pick up that smell. And you've had my grandfather come through many times, but even when I was little, I used to play the piano. And my grandfather took me to piano lessons. And we had a piano in our living room, and he would sit in the kitchen because he was, disabled. He wouldn't come into the living room. I would play the piano, and I would play Dust in the Wind. And after my grandfather passed away, Dust in the Wind would come on the radio all the time, especially when I was thinking of him. Isn't it amazing? I don't know how many classes we were here, and my grandfather would just come right in
And Walter was one of his best friends, you said.
Yes. And he came in very strongly that night, very strongly. And like you said, you were, working on another woman, and she's like, I don't know any Walter. I don't know any Walter. And I'm like, I think I do.
And you said he used to come to your grandfather's restaurant
all the time.
Yeah,
He used
and
to
I
come
even described
in.
what he looked like.
Yes,
remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
He used to come in his house, visit with my grandfather all the time. He was one of his best friends.
And how that happened was I was working on this woman, and her grandfather came through, and I gave her a couple messages from her grandfather. But the grandfather actually brought Walter through. He came in through that grandfather.
Yes.
So it's amazing. I mean, so they're working together on the other side too.
Yeah. And if there's an opportunity that they can, they do. And if someone is, I'm very open to it. I've been very open to it my whole life. Because my grandfather passed away when I was 17, and I used to get a lot of signs from him, even that at that young age. But like you said, if somebody is very open to it, they find a way to come through.
One time I had a woman come to my house for a private session, and her husband had passed away, and young too. And of course, she was really struggling. So she wanted to get a message from him. I was working on her, and I kept seeing a Santa Claus hat, a Santa Claus hat, a Santa Claus hat. And, you feel like you're crazy. Okay, I'm seeing, but all right, I'll say it. So I said to her, I keep seeing a Santa Claus hat. And she actually said, can I sit up? So she was laying on the table. I said, sure. She sat up and she looked at me. She said, are you serious? I said, yes. And she said, I don't believe this. Before I came here, she said, I was looking through my jewelry box where I keep his wedding band and everything. And she said, and I found a picture of him in a Santa Claus hat that he used to dress up for the Kiwanis. And I said to him, give me a sign today that you're okay. And she said, now how would you have known? And she said, that's the exact picture I was looking at. And I said, well, you asked.
I was going to say, she asked for the sign. Yes.
And I'm an instrument.
And you're a channel.
An instrument. And and he speaks to me, and I give her the information. Now, the funny thing of it is she said, I keep his wedding band in there. And she said, and I can't find it. I've looked all around. I've looked all over the house. So I said to her, he's showing me a closet. So she said, I've checked all the closets. I said, no, he's telling me it's in the closet. And she said, well, I'll check again. So she went home and looked, and she checked in his one sports jacket that he used to wear to the Kiwanis. And there it was in the pocket.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome? That brings me so much joy, and it's exciting.
It is exciting.
Now, if you have a limiting belief that, oh no, people die, that's it. They don't talk to you. That's voodoo. That's this or that. You can keep that limiting belief. I'm not judging you on it.
Right.
But if it's serving you, bringing you peace, bringing you joy, that's fine. If you want to be open and you want to hear from your loved ones, they are around us. And I understand totally. You still want that physical. You want to be able to actually give your grandfather a hug and smell his Old Spice. We don't have the physical anymore. And we want it, and we'll always want it. However, they are with us. They are with us. They never leave us.
No.
And some, like when I think about my mom, even though I had, my aunt channeled the shadow side. My mother channeled God. So when I lost my mother, I lost God in a way. I mean, I was devastated. Biggest blow of my life. She died when she was 49. I was 22. She had melanoma. But when she passed away, I would ask her for signs, and I didn't really get a lot of signs from her. My mother's very quiet with messages, but she always spoke to me like in riddles, like people take kindness as a weakness. She always riddles, right? So when she does, it's very very light, but it's the way she was in this dimension too.
It's subtle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, you spoke about in earlier podcasts, you were grieving so badly, I want to say, that it's hard for it was probably tough in the beginning for her to come through because you were just so, you know.
I had complicated grief because my mother passed away and I stepped right up to take care of my father.
Yeah.
And he was in a clinical depression, and it was, 6 years of hell with my father. And she knew it. She asked me to take care of him. On her deathbed, she said, please take care of your father and Aunt Kay. And she said, you're going to have a life of hell with your father. My father was a good man.
Yeah.
But he was bitter because my mother passed away and he didn't have faith. Thank God I had faith.
But didn't you find though, as the years went on and you were able to release a lot of that grieving,
yes,
anger,
yes,
like, I don't even know what the word is for it. Like when you just want them right here, right now, it eased up and she was able to come.
Yes, yes. Because what happens is when we lose somebody we love, we don't want to let them go.
Right.
And I think I've talked about this before. So we hang on like white knuckling. And a lot of times the images that we have is in the end when they were sick. Like my mother lost her hair. She was all bloated from steroids and stuff. So I had that image, and I took care of her here. She died at home. Both my parents did. But I had that image in my head for a while, and I said I am not going to remember her like this because she wouldn't want that, and she was a beautiful woman. So I didn't think of her that way anymore, but I was holding on to her. Plus, I was trying to be her in a way because I wanted her legacy to continue. And I lost part of myself with her, so it felt easier to become somebody new because I wasn't Petra anymore. Doing this work, I went back to Petra when I sat her down when my mother died, and I went back and got her, and I'm telling her we're not going to listen to these limiting beliefs. We're going to grow. We're going to find our purpose. We're going to find God within ourselves because my mother was my mirror. You're my mirror. I'm your mirror. It's important.
It is important.
It's really important. We're not meant to do it alone. So if you just ask yourself, pay attention to your thoughts. We think all the time driving to work. Pay attention. You're having thoughts. You might be thinking about what you did yesterday. You might be thinking of a list of stuff to do. Another big one is sometimes just reminiscing conversations with people, and sometimes they're ugly ones. And that's going to make you feel ugly. It's going to make you feel angry. And then you walk into work and there's that person that just is irritating, and you're going to zone in on him, and you're going to have a crummy day. So pay attention to what you're feeling, what you're thinking. Challenge limiting beliefs. Say, you know what? Do I really believe that about myself? And if you do, you don't have to continue. Say, how does it make me feel? That's the thing. How does it make me feel? You can't think your way into growing. You feel your way into growing. You can't think your way through grieving. You feel your way through grieving. You feel it. You feel it. And the only way that it doesn't happen is if you're afraid and you get stuck in it. It still happens, but then you're stuck. And that doesn't feel good. But remember, it's just a vibration. And because we're human and we hear, we're taught words of good, bad, happy, sad. But if you just label it as, pain, there's a vibration in pain. And feel that vibration and breathe into it and relax into it and give it a voice and ask God to take it. And then go back in and look for yourself and say, where's Petra? And that's what this work is. And we're not meant to do it alone. And that's why I love the classes. That's why we're doing the podcast. And so it's up to you. This is also fun. This is a lot of fun. It's a great way of living.
It is.
Because this world gets very flat. And there's going to be, just like within our internal world, which is inside us, we have an internal world, and then we have this external world we live in. There's going to be, before you get to the light, there's the shadow to go through. And it's going to get heavier. It gets heavier. It gets darker. It gets heavier. But the light is always above it. So just keep looking up. Just keep looking up, and remember, it's God, you, and then everybody else. And that's not selfish. That's not selfish. because you are going to shift. You're going to raise your vibration. You are going to be so fulfilled. You're going to find your own love. You're going to find that you can trust yourself. You're going to find that you do have courage. You're going to find that you know how to unconditionally love people and yourself, which totally gives you freedom. And it gives you permission. It gives you permission to live. It gives you permission to think and see and hear and act like a child again. It's awesome. Awesome. And then you have that internal smile. Inside your heart, you have this internal smile, and you just sit there and you watch other things. And it's like this, like the cat that ate the mouse. And most of the time, you don't say anything because people lots of times don't want to hear it. And that's okay. Right? So thank you for taking the time and joining us again. And I hope that you got something out of this. And please leave comments. And we are going to be working on having us also taped so you can check us out and see what we look like too. We're taking another limiting belief and throwing it out the window, right?
Exactly.
I'm getting a lot of good feedback from people in my class and stuff, and I always get permission. I want you to know the people that I share stories about, I always get permission. I don't use names, and sometimes I change the setting a little bit, but I always get permission, and I'm grateful for that because they have their stories and they know it helps to hear the stories. Like last week we were talking about stories, right? One of the reasons why your grandfather can come through so easily is because you listen to his stories and you have that bond.
Right.
You had that center self together, so of course he can come through to you. Right? That's the magic.
It is the magic.
This is magical. Thank you and enjoy your week.